Jason and I first met at my cousin Gravina's house back in 2009. I believe it was Easter long weekend, so it was around April. We were preparing for exams, so all of us had gone out downtown separately, but we all ended up back in Abbotsford, and Gravina had invited some friends over after a night out, and that's the first time I met Jason. And the first thing I noticed about him was his voice. He has a very distinctive voice. It's not the typical voice that you would expect from an Indian man. It's quite different. I'm sure all of you know Jason. He has a very different voice. And the second thing that I noticed about him was his smile. He has the biggest smile ever, and that's definitely what captivated me to learn more about him.
The first thing I noticed, she was very shy. She was very reserved. There was definitely something different to her. At the time, I definitely didn't know what that was, but over time, I think once I got to know her a little better, I got to know her more. But the first instinct that I had was very shy, very reserved, and just kind of to herself.
He was going to UBC, and at that time I was going to SFU, and he was playing soccer at that time, and that really intrigued me because being able to have a full-time school structure as well as going to soccer on a daily basis. I believe he had practice sometimes twice a day, so it was quite intense. So that really intrigued me, kind of wanting to learn more about him and his dedication towards his career and his passion of sports.
I took a bus to get over to the Expo Line SkyTrain, and I took the SkyTrain to get to Metrotown. And we're meeting at Metrotown to watch a movie. And at that time, we didn't really decide on the movie when we got there. It was The Invention of Lying, probably one of the worst movies I've ever watched.
So he SkyTrained there, and I took a bus there. So old school. We took public transit, and we watched the movie Invention of Lying, which, by the way, was the worst movie ever. But I remember it was Tell Us Tuesday, so back then we also received a free popcorn each, which is great because if you know both Jason and I, we love to eat. Popcorn is one of our favorite items, but we are allergic to it, but we still love to eat popcorn. But the thing is, for our first date, none of us even touched the popcorn because we were so nervous. So we just sat there watching the movie thinking, why are we here? It was the worst movie ever.
The date probably didn't go as well just because the movie was pretty horrible, but all in all, everything I think for the most part was good.
We had a second date after that, so I guess it didn't go that bad.
I knew that she was the one, and it wasn't anything like I was seeking to fall in love or find someone who's my soulmate or anything, but I think we were very compatible, and we grew this comfort with one another that I could truly just be who I am, and I didn't have to kind of shy away from being reserved or someone who I'm not. So I think just when I became more and more comfortable around her, with her, that's when I really knew that I could spend the rest of my life with her.
I wanted to marry someone that was my best friend and not someone that was just in love with. It was really important for me that I had a life partner. So once I met Jason and I realized that we had that extra bond, I was able to be serious with him, I was able to be silly with him, I could express my feelings. I really felt secure and comfortable. And so that was about, I'd say about 4 months after that I knew that he was the one and I was falling in love with him. But I didn't let him know. I wanted to make sure that he was the first one to say I love you. So I'm sure he'll tell you his story, but I think we fell in love simultaneously, but he was the first to say it.
Whether it's smiling all the time or just having that embracing kind of that positive spirit, she always looks at the glass half full, whereas I know at times I can be a bit of a pessimist, but she is a very positive person. That's kind of what I strive to be as well.
So we went to Bowen Island, and I must say Bowen Island is absolutely incredible. We stayed at a beachfront house. It's Jason's friend's house, Matt Robinson's, and it was absolutely gorgeous. We had full windows outlooking the water. We could see the ferries pass by.
I let her know that we're just gonna go out there. My friend has a little cabin, we're just gonna spend the weekend. And at this time I was in tax season, so she had no idea that I'd been shopping around for a ring. I was overplaying. I mean, I was busy with work, but overplaying how busy I was.
I guess I didn't realize at the time, but Jason was being very weird. He had his hands in his pocket and he wouldn't move his hands at all, and he would be shaking his leg. He just sat there. He wouldn't get up or anything. So I was kind of like, something's weird with him, but I still had no idea.
We went for a little walk, came back in the afternoon, and then again I was just kind of being a little witty and telling her to kind of seek out and see if she sees any little small boats.
And I was trying to look in the water. I'm like, what do you want me to look at? And I kept saying, Jason, Jason, what do you want me to look at? While I had the binoculars. And finally I took the binoculars off and he was on the ground on his knee and he was shaking. His hands were shaking. He had the ring. And the scariest part was we were on the deck and the deck had gaps in between it. So I was worried that he'd be dropping the ring, but he was just on his knee proposing with the most gorgeous ring I've ever seen. And so that was the proposal, and obviously I said yes.
We've obviously become very close over the last several years together, but I think it's more as a couple and as being a good husband to Elicia. That's definitely one thing that I would like to work on and looking forward to.
Ever since we've been dating, we've been living in different cities, so it's been quite hard to spend a lot of time together within the week. Sometimes we'd be going, I guess, a few weeks without seeing each other, so it can be quite hard. So I'm excited about spending every night with my best friend. Very lucky that we found each other and we get to spend the rest of our lives together and just have fun and enjoy life.